All right, so the
What's the
next,
name of the city of Rochester?
I'm sorry?
City of Rochester?
I
Are you
don't,
asking the name of the YouTube channel?
oh. I think it's rochester.gov, right? It's cityofrochester.gov, and then we should have our, there should be a PAB specific YouTube thing, YouTube thing. That's not specific.
Okay, thank you. So all in favor of moving to executive session?
Okay, so the next item, folks, is I wanted to kind of let you know, since some of you were able to attend this and some of you were not. On Monday, I think it was Monday. This week has been a blur, but it was Monday or Tuesday. The mayor and city council had a meeting regarding WilmerHale and some of the ideas on that. So I just wanted to ask if anybody had a chance to attend that meeting besides myself, because I just watched it on YouTube. Okay. All right. So one of the things I had, so just for transparency, I did ask some questions during the meeting. I asked if we were going to be able to be present during these meetings with WilmerHale. Were you going to be able to have access to the data? Were you going to, hold on, let me get the rest of the questions since I have them drawn up for you. And also to the letter from WilmerHale to Mayor Warren, to Mayor Warren is actually in our email, and it was sent on Monday, the 2nd, or no, actually it was written the 2nd. It was sent to us on October 5th. And the questions that I asked were, who will WilmerHale be reporting to, mayor, city council, or both, which was answered. It will be, I think, both. Correct me if I'm wrong, BJ and Stephanie. Will the PAB be invited to these debriefing sessions? Will we have access to the data that they collect? How we go about receiving that data? If we have questions, who is our contact person regarding the data? Who will be able to be at the table for these discussions? Will the PAB, will they be engaging with outside community groups and not just stakeholders? Because the key stakeholders was a term that they used in the letter. And my reasoning for asking that question especially was that, there's always key stakeholders that are being tapped in the city that it just seems to me, honestly, just saying, it seems to be the same folks. And I believe that there should be community members giving input into, what it's like to live here, what it's like to be a part of this community that don't necessarily hold any stakes. And so that was the reason for that. Councilmember Lightfoot did ask my questions in open meeting, and they went ahead and answered some of them. And so I asked if, I know that there was a back and forth about being able to attend debriefing meetings, but I asked that I was very persistent in asking that we be able to attend the debriefing meetings. I was then notified by Councilmember Lightfoot and President Scott that they would work with us to make sure that our concerns were heard, and that I also continue to stress that citizens' voices need to be at the table as well. And I think that was it. So
I could offer some additional feedback. I know you asked if. So at the committee meeting that took place at 4 o'clock today, there was some discussion at the end, and I believe that there is an intent to have a committee, and I would prefer that folks watch the end of that meeting just to hear the full dialogue, because I was doing a number of things and don't want to get anything wrong. But I believe that the intent is to have a committee that they report to that will have membership, and the suggested membership is the executive director of the PAB. So you would have representation through your executive director who'd be able to communicate things back to you. And and I think that they discussed additional participants from the race commission, from the council, and the mayor's office. So if you listen to the end part of the committee meeting that took place, it's also on the same YouTube channel that this meeting is currently streaming on. You'll get a little bit more information, and those details still will be worked out as the legislation hasn't even been submitted to retain WilmerHale as council yet.
Was there any further discussion of where the funding would come from?
There was discussion that city forfeiture funds might be able to be used, which are I believe they're non-taxpayer funds. They're funds that are, you're familiar with them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But the question is, if that's possible, I think I'd ask Shawnee to ask you that, right? About whether those funds then could be used for PAB work as well?
I'm not certain if they can be, and I was not asked that question until now.
Oh, I'm sorry, I
Oh,
did not have
sorry.
a chance to ask.
That's all right. Okay, well, I've asked it, but we can,
Okay,
Johnny,
yep,
I have a question that with respect to the letter.
Okay.
The letter describes 3 phases. And my question is, or my objection or whatever, is that the phases are not very granular.
Okay.
That is the objectives are fairly general, and there aren't precise endpoints that there are precise endpoints are not given.
I don't want to cut you off, Dr. Harrison, but I do want to let you know that the council has supported exploring a first phase and have not expressed support at this moment for a second and third phase. So the first phase, which will be outlined in more detail, would be the only portion that would be up for discussion at this point, because the second and third phases are not currently being considered, especially not until we see the work that is done in the first phase.
Are you saying that the council has asked for more granularity in the first phase?
I think that there will be additional discussion about the granularity. And I know that there's not a contract yet signed and there's not a committee yet put together. I think that they're focusing around certain items that they want to have done, and hopefully we can get additional information shared with the PAB when we have it as well.
so that brings up a good point, Bob, that, we still, as the PAB, we should be asking questions. This is the time to do that. And
Well,
I think if
yeah.
we want to write some down to submit to city council regarding WilmerHale, that I think that we should do that. So that would be a question about granularity and what the specifics would look like as they become available.
I have another question about whether has there been any research into or discussion of the results that they had in Baltimore or Chicago?
Not on the end of the council.
Okay.
I have not looked at those items. I know that the mayor has had the chance to review a report that they've done for a conference of mayors, but I have not personally had the opportunity to look at. But I do believe that they come highly recommended from other cities that the mayor has had conversations with their leadership as well.
So that would be another good question to maybe put on a question for city council.
So some of these questions might not be for city council, they might be for the administration, just to clarify that. So some of them might not be things that we would necessarily answer, but things that we could certainly pass on to try to get some answers to if you send them in writing.
Okay.
Sure. So who would that be addressed to? Because
You can send me any questions that you have and I can try to facilitate them at the time being.
Jura.
No, I would think that city council would want to do due diligence
I agree.
before voting for funding.
And I also think too, I mean, one of the things that they said and that the mayor said in the city council meeting was that, we are a function of city council, right? And that, if we have questions that we would like for, one of the council members to pursue, that maybe that would be something that they can ask, or another question. And I have no problem with sending questions to the administration, but that's just something I just wanted to throw out there.
I would send them to me and I will do my best to facilitate getting responses.
Any other questions regarding WilmerHale or any other comments?
BJ, you spoke about this current document that the mayor's reading or referencing to, or
You want me to send it to you, Celia? I'm looking right at it.
yes, that'd be great.
Give me a second. I know this email can get a little dicey here. Hold on. Anybody else need to see this?
I would
Yeah.
like
Yes,
to
can you
read-
send it to me as well?
Why
Sure,
don't you
I'll
send
send
it to
everybody.
everybody?
Well, so
Yes.
it was sent to everyone, so I'll just resend. Okay, so it's going to all of us PAB-wise. There you go. It's going to your city email.
I saw the letter, but not a larger document.
It should be an attachment.
Shawnee, are you ready for the next question?
I am.
When's our next meeting?
October 22nd.
Why, why
That's the
such a-
date. That's the date that was sent to me and the date that I submitted with the press release or for a media announcement, and it's been on the website.
What's the problem, Bob?
it just seems like we have a lot to talk about, that's all.
Okay. We do. So we can either have a meeting or
I thought we were meeting weekly.
I don't think there was any discussion about us meeting weekly.
That was for the interviews.
But if you want to have the discussion right now,
You can always call another meeting.
Well,
Or we
I
had
just-
discussed doing, sort of educating ourselves in the interim. So,
I just think there's a lot of stuff flying around to let it fly for a couple of weeks.
though I also feel at this point, so close to having an executive director with us that it would be, again, I guess I'm more a collaboration person in some way, but it would be nice to, now go forward with them. So,
okay, so Bob, are you asking for a meeting in between or what are you?
If no one else has any other thing else to say about it, I'll let it go.
Anyone else? Okay. Okay. There was one other thing, and then I wanted to talk briefly about, I'm so sorry, folks. I'm having trouble with my computer. It's, my mouse is disappearing all the time. I think the next item on our agenda was the start talking about education. There we go. Okay. Okay. And I wanted to start getting the ball rolling. I know that we were the anti-racism training. We can start with that. So you should have received an email a couple of days ago from BJ regarding the anti-racism training. BJ, can you speak a little bit more to that just real quickly, just to catch up people, if you wouldn't mind?
Certainly. It's just to save the date. We had initially talked about this with folks in January when you first came in, that it was an idea that we were going to be doing a training with the People's Institute of Survival and Beyond. There aren't a lot of details to share right now, other than the fact that this is a nationally known training that the REAL initiative, which is Racial Equity and Leadership Initiative, which the city has been doing and helping to train other community partners to do, has really embraced this and is looking to do this training. So this would be a joint training between the city council members, city council staff, the mayor and her senior management team, and then the Police Accountability Board and its executive director. Currently, the plan is a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's the only time that we're able to get for folks. We do recognize that that interferes with some folks' religious observances, and the general or the individual who's helping to coordinate did say that there will be additional trainings that will occur with other bodies. And if folks have to miss a day, these might be planned during the week or other times that if people have conflict, they might be able to jump into one of the other trainings or see a different day of the training. It'll be stuff that we need to work out, probably a lot more detail, but just trying to have people reserve that time as an opportunity to have everyone sit down and really begin the work and the training of this.
Okay. I know I did hear that there was one person did have a conflict, but I I hadn't heard of anyone else. So if there is a conflict or any issues, just please reach out so that we can start figuring that out.
Well, I mean, I typically work Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so I'll have to figure that out.
Okay.
And
So
the other
do we-
thing, Dr. McIntosh, is we would definitely learn, and I'll connect you with Lomax Campbell. But if they do other trainings, I mean, there is value in being able to do it with your peers here. But if it is something, you know, we don't want to cut into your bread and butter. So if you need to work, you need to work, and we would look and see if there would be other opportunities. And again, these are not mandated trainings. We're hopeful that everyone will be able to do them. And we really think folks will get a lot out of it. And that's the hope. But again, there could be other opportunities for you to make it up or to do other trainings as well.
And I know you said that you don't have a lot of information, but are you kind of thinking an 8-hour day possibly, or?
I believe it's 1 4-hour day and then 2 8-hour days. So it's a pretty extensive training.
Online, on Zoom?
This would be in person, and they would be finding a room that was big enough for people, because right now this would be the same size as the race commission, and the race commission is able to meet in rooms of this size and still be socially distant.
All right, I'm concerned about ventilation systems. I know I'm crazy maybe, but the distance doesn't mean anything if I'm breathing in everyone's possible COVID germs.
Yeah.
Ida, did you have something?
Yeah, I do work on Saturdays too. I'll be starting, I think, another week from now. So I do teach on a Saturday, and I you know, I don't mind doing things outdoors, but a little bit like Dora, and I do run a daycare, and I don't want to expose myself if I don't really have to.
Okay.
So, but I'll do the best that I can.
Certainly, and if people don't feel comfortable, they certainly would not be expected to go to do something outside of their comfort level, I would say. Again, the tentative plan is MLK weekend, so it would be in January. So I don't think outdoors is really an option, at least not here. But if it does, if we do find there may be an option for virtual, I think that the training, from my understanding, loses a little bit of what folks get out of it in a virtual setting. But I think at this point, it's just to save the date, more information to come.
Okay. All right. So it seems like there's going to be some, so we'll keep an eye on that and then we'll let you know. All right. And so I know as far as like our education committee and talking to some folks within the community about participating, in April, I did reach out to some folks about coming in to speak to us. However, I think that, you know, I know Bob and I had talked about this months ago, but I actually would like to start, or at least ask to come up with an education committee so that we can start putting some stuff together along with the executive director so that we can get that ball moving as well and start getting some dates on the schedule planned for education purposes. Yes, Dora.
Are you asking for volunteers for it, or what are you?
I'm asking for volunteers.
I'm a volunteer.
I'll
Dora,
volunteer for the education committee.
Danielle,
Yes.
Celia, okay. And myself, I'd like to volunteer as well. So that's 4 of us. Does anybody else want to participate?
What about Bob?
Sure, put me in.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, so education, that's our second committee. Whee!
And you anticipate this as a standing committee also, Shani?
Yeah. I do.
So you're only planning on having board members on the committee?
Yes,
Just
at
making
this
sure.
time, yes.
Okay.
Yep. So
Okay.
that's Celia, Danielle, Bob.
We talked about sort of an advisory group, which is of community or other people, but in terms of, yeah.
Yeah, so I'd say an advisory committee / we need to start like getting some dates on the calendar about, you know, like about some of these issues and figuring out what that looks like. I really would like to have them help us with our course curriculum so that we can carry this on to the next board members that come on and so forth and so on. Okay, so then I will get some dates out regarding that, and then we can meet and discuss what that's going to look like for us. Okay, and is there anything else anybody wanted to say about Education Committee? Are there any ideas about who we would approach with Education Committee?
Well, haven't we talked about the authors of the book we've been reading and
Mhm.
Alex Vitale and some other folks? So,
Yep.
and then the folks at RIT, I think we, yeah.
Yep, so Dr. Klofis, Dr. Altheimer, Alex Vitale, and I know that there are some, one of the things I would really like to look into, I see you, Matthew, is I'd really like to look into like having a unit just on legal issues, ethics. I think that would be really good. So we can figure out what that would look like. Go ahead.
I'd also like to see us engage with folks who are involved in trauma-informed care and or other approaches than just the legal or the academic side. Someone like, I know he's a national figure, but like someone like Resma Menachem from Minneapolis, who does work around trauma and not just reconciliation. I know that's a religiously loaded word, but people who are also, there's the academic side of it. There's the kind of the, the data and the studies. And there's also studies around people's experience, their lived experience, the way that trauma impacts both police officers and also the people impacted by police misconduct. And so I'd hope that that would be part of a holistic approach to education, that we're not just doing legal education or just academic, but also some of the sociological, psychological, spiritual aspects of this as well.
I like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's really good.
I agree with that as well, especially looking into someone especially like Dr. Joy DeGrew.
Yep.
She deals with both sides of it. And she's really, she's been here a couple of times too. So I think I saw her in Rochester, I believe it was last year,
She's been here
2019.
almost every year.
Yeah, she comes almost every year. So just kind of being on the, just making sure we're looking that up so we can kind of go to one of her seminars that she has here in Rochester every year.
So she has some folks that are connected to her that are here in the community that I will likely be talking with.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so there are some trauma-informed care mental health providers that I believe we should talk to. We talked about the medical aspect of trauma or the physical aspect of trauma. I love the idea of having that approach because, what does post-traumatic stress disorder look like? What does, continuous stress look like in a police officer, in a citizen that is continuously exposed to, systemic racism and, over-policing, right? So those are things I think, those are questions that we will actually have to figure out ourselves, I think. I know that there are people that are dealing with that, but I'm not sure there are people that are actually addressing that issue of saying the trauma of policing looks like this. So that's something we can definitely look into, but that's something that I've been reading about a lot lately and just kind of asking myself, just in practice, especially working in community medicine. So.
And then of course, focusing on children, minors.
Yes.
As Bob had brought up before.
Yeah, so I wonder if there's, I wonder who we would talk to about that. Celia, suggestions? Vivona?
Not off the top of my head, but I'll think about it and let you know.
Okay.
Well, you got a school full of schools of child psychologists.
I think, yeah, we can definitely talk to those folks. Willow.
The other thing to think about is that most police officers have families. And I don't see that a lot of attention is being paid to the family unit. The attention is paid to the police officer who's stressed and who needs some time off. But we somehow seem to be missing the fact that he or she's going home and beating their wives.
So there are a lot of issues, like if we're talking about, so let's just leave it at chronic stress, right? And how chronic stress affects people. I mean,
I'm just arguing for more generality, that's all.
Sure. So that's not really but I would say this, that's a very big part of this discussion. And just to start with just, vicarious trauma, just start there, right? You bring that home to your family. What does that look like? You, especially being a history of, being a medical provider all those years, understand what chronic stress looks like, maybe, right? I can't speak for you, but I know for us that
I stressed other people. I didn't stress myself.
Oh, really?
So one of the other things that I'm kind of interested in knowing a little bit more about are the dispatch, how calls are dispatched. I think there would be some benefit for our group to know how that is, how calls go across.
I wonder, let me figure that out. I know that's Monroe County, that's public safety not public safety, Scottsville Road, I think. I'm not sure.
Go ahead, Ida.
So not just how calls are dispatched, but if, what can a person, right, a citizen do if they do call and, they're having some kind of issues with the officers, what are their rights? Who else can they call and get a response? Because a lot of times people don't know that. They don't know that they can call that person's lieutenant or whoever. So that type of thing. I totally agree how our calls dispatch. I had to learn that as a resident, right? How calls are put in order and what can residents do? Like, if you call the police, I learned that I always had to ask for the dispatcher's number. And that's helpful because when you're following up on a call, you can always give that dispatcher's number and then they can go find out how is that documented. So those are type of things that I feel that we should know, because as we help people and people ask us, then we're able to educate them in that way.
Yeah. I know. So I've met with Center for Dispute Settlement, but I think as far as Education Committee, we should all be meeting with them to ask them questions, especially when you look at the breakdown of reports of complainants that were processed and then that actually were sustained versus, and how that process looks like, how they come to the determination and how involved they were with the police department and how they process complaints. So
Lackaware and Forsyth were pretty negative about them.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Barbara, what's her name? Lackaware and Ted Forsyth.
Ted.
In the document that they prepared were pretty negative about that.
So that's fine, but I think we should still figure out, because Ida's talking about process and that was the process. And so we still need to figure out, we still should be evaluating or at least listening to what that process was, especially since it was here for so long.
And also I think that they worked under more constraints than we're going to have. Sorry, I didn't.
Go ahead, Matthew.
So I also think that they may have something to say to us about that, about, what they would do if they could.
Sure. Yep. They were great. So they were really transparent and they had a lot of information. So Matthew.
I think the legislation also gives significant voice to the community in determining the priorities of the PAB in terms of what do the constituencies of the PAB consider to be the most pressing issues. So I know it's kind of a chicken and egg thing where we're at in the process, but I'd love to find some way, whether it's through social media or through other aspects, to say, like, what are the issues that are most salient in communities that are most impacted by perceived police misconduct. So maybe it's the treatment of minors, maybe it's other things, but we have our priorities, right? As board members, we care about certain things, but our communities might all be saying, like, we all care about this thing right now, right? Like, in light of the 104 incident a few months ago, like, we want to know about minors, as Bob has brought up, or we want to know about something else. So if there's some way to also at least initially do some of that work until the executive director is in place to do some more of that community outreach spearheading, to at least figure out what are some of the issues that are in our communities that we most need to learn about, so we can also start addressing those as well.
There's another thing that I've been looking at that I think is very interesting, and that is the discrepancy in police deaths amongst white people. that's, that has, economic class has a significant impact on the frequency at which whites are killed by police.
Mhm.
If you look at all white countries like Finland and Iceland, they actually have 0 police deaths per year compared to a place like the United States. So there's a discrepancy, an economic discrepancy that's overlaying the racial discrepancy.
Yep.
Going back, just is that what our communities care about, right? The community is most impacted by police misconduct. And if it is, great. And if not, I just want to make sure that that's important, because that might be something that we care about or whatever. But like, is it something that the communities that have voted for this board, the communities that continue to find hope in this board, to hear their complaints, are we prepared to hear the things that are most important to them? And I want to make sure that that's balanced with our own kind of passions and desires to see police accountability as well.
So you brought up 2 times Matthew, the communications committee. So I was under the impression that was, so we've already have a Facebook page, right? So that we can start, we can ask very simple questions and,
Agreed. And as everyone here probably knows, like, internet and social media are also, as Bob just raised, a class-based kind of access. So I think, again, I know there's a procedure to this. We can't do much without our executive director in place, but I would say that it's imperative that as soon as possible, we find a way, in spite of COVID, in spite of everything else, to start to give our community more of a direct voice in determining where this board is going, because the community gave voice to this board in the first place, and to make sure that, if the community is concerned about police conduct in schools, right? And I know that's not an issue as much anymore because it's been voted out, or concerned about residency or concerned about these things, like, in addition to our own concerns, just making sure that we go over the top to make sure that those voices are heard. Because it's very easy for people who look like me, who live in neighborhoods like I live in, to just ignore that and have like theoretical ideas, and that's great. But that doesn't mean that that's the priorities of, the 77% of the folks, or whatever the number was, sorry if that's wrong, who voted for this legislation.
Thank you. So I wondered, I think maybe someone brought this up, but the connection with the justice system, really having some more training on that. Maybe that's just going to be through our readings, but really looking at that connection, they've, the amount of misdemeanors, the amount of arrest, different things like that, and what's behind that. I think we need to also add to our training and how that directly correlates to the justice system.
Okay.
And of course, reviewing the current policies and procedures of the RPD.
Yep, we got a lot to do. BJ, can I ask you a quick question? So before, it's almost 8 o'clock, so I just wanted to ask, I know that you had just offhandedly mentioned to me about a building and about saying, like, can we just get some more information about that procedure? Is it too early to ask this question? But I just wanted to.
I think so. We are still looking to identify space for the PAB. I continue to send requests, but in the interim, we do have an office space in the city council office, which I think would be helpful for maybe the first couple of weeks or month for the executive director to be able to sit there, so that if he, she, they have questions, I will be a door away that they can come and ask me, and they'll be surrounded by folks in the building to be able to add some support. So that is still to be determined. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of like, where would you like to go? It's a where will there be space that is still that's accessible. So we're trying to make sure that we're finding a place that's definitely on a bus line and
Right.
things like that. So
Will we be given like a list of places to look at so that we
nope.
can?
I think that we have two potential places,
Okay,
and it's about figuring out which one of them works. And there's really nothing I can share with you at this moment. I wish I could give you more. I will give you more when
there's
I
just a
have it.
quick question. So I just was curious. That's all. Just curiosity. Okay, cool. Well, thank you. All right. So folks, it's 7:56. So I want to be mindful of time. Yes, Matthew.
I just would love to hear if you're able to give an update on the open letter that we sent and those who have responded, those who are still pending response, because that was something we held a press conference about. And I'd love to hear where we're at in terms of meetings with folks to include the PAB. And we mentioned with the Wilmer Hill stuff, the process, right? So where are we at with all that? Who's responded, who hasn't? Who do we need to kind of reach out to follow up?
So the only response that we received was from City Council. We did not receive responses from any other agency. And let me just review who we sent it to. Okay. 1 second. Okay, so that was lovely Mayor Warren, obviously the new police chief, Adam Bello, Bill Johnson, Arlene Santiago, and Dr. Shafiq. We did not receive responses from them.
But we did receive one from City Council.
We did receive one from City Council. It was sent out a couple of weeks ago.
Do we need to,
I would also,
has there been a response sent to the new interim police chief?
I would note that the mayor, someone in the mayor's office reached out to me to try to set up a meeting time with the new police chief and sent some times during the day for you all. And I just responded back suggesting that Thursday nights were the time that you all tended to have available, and haven't heard back yet. And I know that she doesn't start until I think next week or the week after, but the mayor's office has reached out about trying to make sure that the interim police chief will be connected with the PAB.
Thank you. I know that the mayor said on record at some of these meetings with Wilmer Hill that PAB would be included in various conversations, and that she laid out kind of her vision for how we fit into things. So I'd love to make sure that the next steps are taken with those things so that we can continue that dialogue publicly, and that that's something we embody and not just kind of theorize about.
Mayor was very willing to meet with us. I spoke to her and she was very willing to meet with us. I would just say, in light of what's going on now, give her a little time. This is probably not the best time, but getting her to meet with us, it's just a matter of setting a time and scheduling with her.
Absolutely.
So I understand that there's not a lot of time lately and there's a lot going on. However, I would still think that, hopefully we can receive an answer from administration regarding our letter.
And certainly following up with, if there's not a direct response, a reminder to the county executive, to the
Yes.
interim police chief, to other folks that like, hey, we'd love to hear from you because we're willing to meet. We're still waiting.
Okay. Okay. All right, folks. So it is now 8 o'clock. I want to be mindful of time. So I'm going to put a motion on the floor to adjourn for the evening.
So move.
Seconded by Matthew.
Second.
Okay. All right. So all in favor of adjourning the meeting? No, gosh. All right.
No vote.
No vote. All right. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you so much.
I'll have a little sign that I